Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. We got sign-up sheets for 3 bills. Don't know how far we'll go today. We've got this meeting room for 2 hours, so surely to God we can get through some of these things. But we got sign-up sheets down front for 132, 213, and 99, I believe, and we'll see how far we can get along with this. Anybody wants to sign up and speak, we'd appreciate you coming up and signing up. Thank this good group for being here today. We got a little bit larger I think Miss Janae over here was able to secure us some different quarters. A little better. We had people standing up. Seemed to be a lot of interest in folks wanting to come and see what we're doing. But thank you for being here. We'll get started. Going to ask Representative Cook to have a word of prayer for us, if you would.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, God. Thank you for all the many blessings of life. Thank you for this chance to come together and serve the people of Georgia, God. We pray for wisdom in our deliberations and that you would have your will and way done here. Please forgive us for our many sins. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone, again for being here. I did something last time I hated doing. I didn't recognize our Secretary of State, and I just saw him come in and sign up. Brian, appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you very much. And I don't know if there's any other officials here. I'm not going to take time to recognize each and everybody, but I do appreciate you coming to the meeting. And at this time, we're going to come. I hope we've got some. All's got the right. We're going to go find out in just a minute. But Representative Hawkins, if you'd come up and come down to the front, we're going to go ahead and hear this bill. See where we can go with this thing today. It should be on now, sir.
Okay. Due to my performance last time with having bill numbers different than the pages that you had, before you is printed for your inspection on the substitute that you have now, which is the same substitute you had a week ago. These were the changes that I was alluding to. These changes were at the direction of the attorney in the Speaker's office, and they're self-explanatory, I believe. They are actually ones that clarify more legally some of the aspects of this bill and the wording of this bill. As you've heard me say a couple times before, this bill is about moving the Board of Dentistry and Board of Pharmacy from the Secretary of State's office to the Department of Community Health, where the composite Board of Medicine it now resides. For the sake of time, we have a number of people signed up to speak to this bill, and with indulgence of the chairman, I'm going to leave my time to follow-up remarks, closing remarks, because you have board members here. You have the attorney that drew the bill here in Legislative Council, so you have ample folks that can answer your particular questions, because I want you to feel very good, very comfortable with this bill when you once again vote it out of committee.
Would you go ahead and just go through the bill for us again? It's been 2 weeks now, 3 weeks, I can't remember, but just go through the highlights. I think you might have handed us out a sheet here.
Yes,
if everybody's got a sheet, if they want to look at that. I'm trying to find mine.
You should have 2 pieces of paper in front of you. One is the analysis of HB 132 LC 335047S, and then you have a statement by the Georgia Composite Medical Board. Does everyone have that? Yes? I think so.
I found my analysis of House Bill 132, LC 335047S. It should be a sheet of paper.
Yes, sir.
And then we have a letter from the Georgia Composite Medical Board.
Yes, sir.
We do have those too.
Okay.
You want to run through this?
Sure. I'll do pleasure of the chairman. This bill is actually in two large parts. The first section, is dealing with pharmacy and the Board of Pharmacy. It addresses the transfer of its powers and its duties from the Department of Community Health, from the Secretary of State's office to the Department of Community Health. You will see additions in here in different sections that are alluded to, and number 1 and number 2 of this handout. The word relevant has been added, notwithstanding the provisions of this subparagraph, on and on. That was added at the request of one of the attorneys in the House. That clarifies the safety of patient information. Any such payment of services by the agency spells out that it's going to the General Treasury, as it does now. All license fees and all fines for both boards and all boards, to my knowledge, goes to the General Treasury. And also the last one, post-certified police officer, was added to the dental portion. That allows the dental board, if needed, to use an investigator who can carry a weapon. I really don't know of any instance we've had of that need, but it does, and this was added by the Speaker's office, the attorney. I think in his mind, what he was doing was broadening our definition, so we may use one of the investigators that is certified, post-certified, from the pharmacy or from the Georgia Drug and Narcotics Agency. You will see a few changes in this bill, and they are in the header, and that addresses that they're asking to be able to employ non-special agents. Those would be investigators that are not post-certified. They would not be toting a weapon. These would be pharmacists that would go in and do the yearly inspections in the pharmacies that they do now. I think the idea behind that is also to free up their post-certified agents. We are passing legislation through this House, as we did today, that addresses to pill mills. These are folks that are not drugstores, and we may well need agents that are armed and going into these places. The second portion is to contract with licensing boards for the purpose of conducting investigations. That allows, in their language, that their investigators can work for other boards, i.e. possibly the dental board, so we can share investigators. Most of these things are mentioned and thought of in this bill, and you will later hear in testimony from the Composite Medical Board, have been thought through as ways to save money for the state and combine services. So with that, can we let them start? Let me bring them to you.
I'm sorry.
I don't want the committee to run out of gas before this is over.
Thank you, sir. Well, 132 is popular. The other two bills don't seem to be as popular today. All right. We will have up I'll tell you what, Secretary Kemp, I'm going to ask you to come on up first if you're here. You and I believe Vincent Russo want to come up. We'll go ahead and hear from you guys today, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak to the bill.
Did you press
the local switch on the mic?
Yeah. No, no.
Try it again.
Is that better?
I'm trying. Check your button down there again. You was better or worse?
Lights on and you're good.
Okay.
All right, I'll start over, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for allowing me to be here to speak to the bill.
Mr. Russo, could I stop you? Let's see if we can get you up to the mic over there, if you don't mind. That doesn't seem to be working right. I apologize, sir. They say they can't hear you very good. Let's try that mic.
I think this is on.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Yeah, you're going to be super loud now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Vincent Russo, and I'm the General Counsel for the Secretary of State's office. Secretary Kemp asked me to look at this, at HB 132, particularly lines 43 through 49 and 823 through 831, with respect to the transfer of these two boards to the Department of Community Health. The issue with these lines involves the language that says that the board shall be a division of the Department of Community Health, provided, however, that except as otherwise specifically provided, the board shall be autonomous from the Board of Community Health and the Commissioner of Community Health, and shall exercise its quasi-judicial, rulemaking, licensing, or policy-making functions independently of the department and without the approval or control of the department, and prepare its budget and submit its budget requests, if any, through the department. In our review of this, this appears to be the language that is in the code with respect to an attached agency, even though this division is not being referred to as an attached agency in the legislation. And I think the concern is that it creates a conflict in the law and is not clear what the relationship of these boards are to DCH and the Commissioner of DCH. The Board of Community Health is established under Title 31, Chapter 2, and under 31-2-6, the code states that the Commissioner of Community Health shall be the Chief Administrative Officer of the department. Subject to the general policy established by the Board of Community Health, the Commissioner shall supervise, direct, account for, organize, plan, administer, and execute the functions vested in the department. There shall be created in the department such divisions as may be found necessary for its effective operation. The Commissioner shall have the power to allocate and reallocate functions among the divisions within the department. Now, the language in the bill that would be moved into the code would create a direct conflict with the responsibilities of the Commissioner, because it's the Commissioner's job to allocate and reallocate the functions among the various divisions within the Department of Community Health. Furthermore, if you look at the executive organization code sections within Title 50, Chapter 4, you'll see where it states that an attached agency is assigned to a department for administrative purposes only and shall exercise its quasi-judicial, rulemaking, licensing, or policy-making functions independent of the department without the approval or control of the department, prepare its budget and submit, if any, and submit its budgetary requests, if any, through the department. So we basically have a distinction without a difference going on here in this legislation that I think, if it's not clear, is going to potentially lead to some further issues down the road for the Department of Community Health and the Commissioner.
All right. Any questions for the presenter today, the speaker? Chairman Dixon.
Is that issue something that is easily correctable by changing the language at the beginning of that, just to make them an attached agency rather than the language that's used right there? Is that what we're talking about here?
That is what we're talking about here. I think it would either need to be an attached agency or not be able to have some of the autonomy that it's being given.
Do you have a comment?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say, I think that's that's one of the big elephants in the room, if you will. Is it going to be an attached agency or is it not? I just think, that's a decision you all as policymakers have to make. I mean, I have my reasons for thinking that's the wrong way to go, but ultimately it's your decision. I just want to make sure that you understand, what the law says and what it means, whether it's going to be a division of the department or whether it's going to be an attached agency with this attached with the department, and there's a big distinction there.
Go ahead.
Would you mind telling us what the downside is, or what?
Well, I think when you compare other attached agencies, as I said in my testimony, like the Real Estate Commission, their budget flows through the Secretary of State's office, but they are an attached agency. They get appropriated $41 per license. There's 70 or 90,000 licenses. They're appropriated $40 to $41 per license. The folks that are under a division of the Secretary of State's office, which means they fall under the current licensing boards that we do the administrative work of, and they're under, within the fold of our Macon office, we get appropriated $14 roughly for those licenses. So you can see the difference in the cost of being an attached agency versus having the efficiencies of the system that's set up within the Secretary of State's office. Now, if it's the will of the legislature to create attached agencies, that's certainly the policy decision that you all have to make based on the arguments that the individual groups that want to go out have for you. But what concerns me about that is, at the end of the day, if there's got to be new money found to fund those, where's that money going to come from? If it's coming from the Secretary of State's office, it's going to devastate an already devastating situation that we have in our Macon office. Or there's going to have to be new money found from somewhere, and we just haven't had assurances on that, and that's why I just cannot support this without knowing exactly the way that's going to work. And it's pretty clear, I think, in the law of the way it's got to be written one way or another, depending on which way it goes, in my opinion.
Any other questions? The medical board that came out years ago, how were they established when they went over to the Department of Community Health, sir?
Well, it's exactly the same. They are an attached agency of Community Health, so they're an autonomous, entity. And if you, I think, look at the cost of running that agency, it's going to be much like the Real Estate Commission. Their per license price is going to be a lot higher than what we have appropriated in the Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
Is that not covered by is that extra cost not covered by the cost of the license?
Well, it's the way the Constitution is, the fees that are paid go into the general fund, and you, the legislators, appropriate the money. So the Real Estate Commission is getting appropriated more per license than the Secretary of State's office. The Composite Medical Board, I believe, is getting appropriated closer to the same as the Real Estate Commission. I can't remember that number off the top of my head, but I know it's a lot more than $14 a license. Because you're basically setting up a new government agency. I mean, if they were to leave and they're not under Community Health, I mean, they've got to have space. They're going to create, I don't know how they're planning on doing that, but it would have seemed to me it's going to be expensive.
All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, one other thing I just would like to add in closing. I know there was a lot of questions about investigations and how that works and the support that the boards currently get in Macon. I have Chris Harvey with me today, my chief investigator that runs our law enforcement division. He's done a lot of interesting work with local law enforcement to arrest people that were practicing dentistry without a license and prescribing drugs as well. He's here today to answer any questions about the experience of our post-certified officers. And Lisa Durden is here as well that can answer questions about how the operations run in Macon and the support and how complaints and other issues dealing with these boards are handled. And they're glad to answer any specific questions that you have now or things that come up during the meeting. We're glad to be here for a resource for the committee as you have to make these difficult decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yes, sir.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
I was under the impression that the cost of the license now is a lot more than what you're getting allocated.
That's correct. I mean, when you look at...
Go.
Well, I was just going to say, when you look at the amount of fees that our licensing boards bring in for all the, the 42, 43 different boards that we have, the hundreds of professions, that generates about $24 million a year. and we're appropriated about 6.8 to run our operation in Macon.
So this might be more towards Lee, but how would you get more money for licensure if it has to come through the House budget?
Yeah. See if that'll work.
I'm not sure I'm stating it
Well,
right.
I understand. What's going to happen if this, I think I can probably talk loud, but that's not working. I think
Try it
what's going
again.
to happen is that these boards will go ahead and submit their license fees and everything else, their permitting and fines, just like we do now, to the general agency, coming to the general fund. And from there, they will also, once they get into DCH, they will be able to put out their own budget through DCH, and that budget will go to OPB, and OPB will list that out, and the legislature will have direct insight and oversight of any budget going back to these two boards. So you actually have more financial control over that. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any other comments?
Well, I would just, say that works both ways. You're the legislators. You decide who gets appropriated what. And I think the issue that you have to ask yourself, and the one, look, I have a lot of good friends that are pharmacists and dentists that I'm sure are not real happy with me right now. But I'm trying to think about 450,000 other working Georgians that are going to be left. And they're going to be asking you, is it fair for these people to get more appropriation per license than these that are over here? Because they're all paying into the system. But one of them's going to get more resources than the other one's getting. And I think that's the concern that I have tried to relay to you all over the last couple of years. And, these aren't the only boards that are going to be asking these questions. And I think it's just a matter of, do you want to create more individual new agencies if this is going to be an attached agency? If it's not, if it's going to be truly a division of Department of Community Health, nurses are now a division of the Secretary of State's office, and that's a whole different scenario. The way we feel the bill's written, it looks like it's going to be an attached agency that will be autonomous. But that's certainly a decision that you all have to make.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Dr. William Butler. Dr. Butler.
Thank you. I'm Dr. William Butler. I'm the current chairman of the Georgia Composite Medical Board. And I came here today to speak on behalf of the bill, obviously at the request of our fellow boards in dentistry and in pharmacy, because of the commonalities in our charge from the state. We're all charged with protecting the welfare of the citizens of Georgia. And we feel that this bill will give us a better platform under which we can serve the people of Georgia, particularly because of the commonalities of purpose. Excuse me. We have already had to work very, very closely with the pharmacy board, for example, over the past year on the pill mill issue. And investigations of that sort are extensive, they're expensive, they require a lot of resources. By putting us all under the same umbrella, we felt that there would be economies of scale, if you will, both in overhead costs, which are fixed at our offices and where my understanding is they would be housed as well, and also with the ability to share investigators and other personnel overhead, whereas this might result in net savings to the state. And I believe that was the purpose of the bill in its initial phase. From our point of view on the board, we believe it would simplify and streamline our ability to interact with and accomplish what we're asked to do by working in conjunction with these other boards. Our fixed costs, I appreciate everything the Secretary of State had to say. I've been told that our fixed costs per licensee that we get in appropriation is about $36, whereas we generate almost $120 for the state. So I think we're a profit center for the general fund, and I believe the other boards are as well. I can't speak to the issue of why there's only a $14 per licensee appropriation for the other boards. That's obviously a decision of the legislature. But at the moment, certainly the State Medical Board, we believe, is not only serving its function to protect the people of the state, but also, I think, being fiscally very responsible for the state. And I believe under the organization as set out in this bill, the other boards would be as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Dr. Butler? Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Ronnie Wallace.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. I'm Ronnie Wallace. I'm from Rome, and I serve on the Board of Pharmacy, and I have for about 5 years since appointment from Governor Perdue. I'm the sole citizen member on that board, so you can imagine the learning curve that I had. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and serve in that role. And it did give me the opportunity to stop by that historic landmark called the Varsity, so I'm appreciative of that too. I'm here in support of House Bill 132 and for specific reasons. I've got appreciation for the partnership that you have with the Board of Pharmacy as we endeavor to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Georgia and protect that extremely important health component known as pharmacy. Having served in local office for 12 years in the city of Rome, I understand that elected officials have to be able to balance revenue and expense while making sure they don't lose sight of that very important health, safety, and welfare of the community. 2 points as background, which will center upon my comments, and I want to convey to you my beliefs that this move and this change is necessary both from a citizen standpoint and as a board member standpoint. I've been in the financial services industry for some 30 years, and I understand the importance of administration in order to reach any desired goals of an agency or a board or a business, whatever they may be. The first point is that the request for alliance with community health has nothing to do with any type of a power surge or a power quest. It's very important. It's simply based on the fact that we need to improve a system that exists currently that does not match appropriately the demands on the system with the resources necessary to perform the assigned mission and the purpose established by the legislature for the Board of Pharmacy in its enabling legislation. Secondly, this request is appropriate because it will provide that the Board of Pharmacy will be attached or alliance or whatever the words may be used to a health agency with comparable concerns and deal with sophisticated issues that should, because of the synergies involved, improve the service delivery to the community at large, that is the citizens of Georgia. Let's talk about what the Board of Pharmacy's purpose is so there's no confusion. Our purpose is very straightforward. We are to ensure the public's health, safety, and welfare of the community. Now, we meet that by different ways. First of all, we ensure that those individuals who handle prescription drugs are properly educated, trained, and licensed, and that any facility that handles prescription drugs is properly inspected and licensed. Because the Board of Pharmacy is currently housed under the Secretary of State's PLB umbrella, staffing and budgetary issues continue to constrain our ability to meet our mission and to fulfill our required purpose of being. The Board of Pharmacy has no individual budget for which to operate. Unlike the Georgia Medical Composite Board, which was mentioned, the Board of Pharmacy cannot currently increase their fees to hire additional appropriate personnel to fulfill their purpose or better meet the needs of the public. Let's talk about money just a second. It may surprise you and people. It may surprise you that as of January 8, 2013, some 36,000 individuals were either licensed or registered by the Board of Pharmacy. Over 4,800 pharmacists were also registered by the Board of Pharmacy. Now, the total licensing and registration revenue for those individuals and those entities, and registration is biannual, was over $7 million. But yet our Georgia Drugs and Narcotic Agent budget is approximately $1,950,000. We simply can't get around to where we're supposed to be, and we simply cannot protect the health and safety of the public. Safety is the issue at hand. I understand the terms that are used, whether they be revenue neutral or cost neutral, and how they're pleasing to the ear of the public and also even to the legislature. But the reality of it is we're talking about safety, and we're talking about health concerns of the community. The process of registration is simply taking too long. And the volume of registrations has increased beyond what's adequately funded, and the end result is slowness. And when health is involved, public health suffers when slowness occurs. How will this help us? We already heard there's over 40 boards that, from auctioneers to wastewater operators, are licensed or registered. And every one of those boards and their providers is very important. But consider the impact of the Board of Pharmacy. When we reach 36,000 people that we license or register, 4,800 pharmacies that we have under our supervision, the people that we touch, particularly the citizens there that use substances and prescription drugs, is enormous. The Board of Pharmacy and I believe that we can more safely provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the public and help in the enforcement, licensing, and reputation of the health industry if we're allowed more of a say in the budgetary process than currently exists. And we believe that the alliance, or as you say, attachment with community health will assist us in accomplishing that. I appreciate your time and your listening. The reality of it is we're all after the same results, and that's the protection of the public. But in my opinion, we can ill afford to continue to go down the existing path when it comes to public health in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Any questions for our speaker? All right, you got. All right, Chairman Dixon.
What happens if the bill passes? What happens if the bill passes, and when the General Assembly then allocates money the following year, and they allocate to you at the same level that they're allocating to everybody else, and you've got a new board now, and you don't have any more money than you had before to operate with?
Well,
what kind of situation have we got then?
Well, there's no doubt we have a transition to face, and the transition is one that, frankly, we've begun to work on as a board to understand the cost and the associated needs of that board. First of all, I'd say to you that we understand that there would be some shared resources. We understand that we would need to work closely with other health agencies, as I've indicated, with the dental board and also public health. So we also, let me give you an example. We agreed in 2011 to begin licensing or registering technicians. And we did that, and there's quite a few of those, and I have those numbers if you're interested. There's quite a few of those technicians that we registered. And we learned a lot about individuals in our cities and counties across the state who were behind the counters. And frankly, it was a very good exercise to make certain that the people that were there were supposed to be there, and we established standards. We collected those fees. Those fees flowed into the general budget. We believed that we were going to get allocations for additional agents, for our drugs and narcotic agents. Those positions were not funded. At least if we are separate and distinct, if we can create our own income, and then we can raise the license fees of the individuals who we supervise or the entities in order to create more revenue, we believe we can justify those funds. For example, I've already indicated that we're taking in now over $7 million in a 2-year period, but yet our drugs and narcotics have only $2 million. We believe that we can have better control over the revenues that we're assigned if we're able to show independently what we're creating.
I would say to you, if you figure out how to get more money from the budget, let me know, because I've been trying to get more for education.
I understand.
And I haven't been real successful yet. But
Any other questions, committee members? Okay. John?
Ought to be consistent. I'm always after Tom here.
Good.
Chairman Tom. What could you do better as a separate board than what is currently being done? I guess what I'm asking is, what is the process that you have to go through to license someone? Is it just a matter of sending in a request, looking at it and say, yes, he's a doctor listed, so a dentist, we're just going to issue him a sheet of paper that says he's licensed?
Well, as to background, I'll defer that to Mr. Allen, the Drugs and Narcotics. I will say to you that that the boards that Secretary of State spoke of, many of those are very much the same. And this is not to say that the Secretary of State's office, particularly PLB, has not done a good job. There have been improvements. But what's happening is that as those flow into the boards, I think the Secretary of State presented to the Office of Budget an indication that it was taking about 71 days to license a new pharmacist, as an example. We believe that when now the individual calls in to the Secretary of State's PLB office, that they may be getting someone who just hung up the phone and talking to an auctioneer, for example. Now they do have scripts, and they are trained as to how to respond, but the individual that they may be talking to may have very little familiarity with the actual issue at hand. So we believe by combining our operations and having people answer the calls, that the individuals making the calls, the inbound calls, will be familiar with the individuals, and the individuals taking the calls also will be familiar. So we believe that we can establish at least I use synergistic earlier, but I think we at least can establish the idea that there is a responsiveness there that maybe does not occur now, simply because there's such a variety of the boards.
The boards that we're talking about here, as far as the dentistry and pharmacy.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other agencies, doctors, nurses have their own, doctors have their own? So it's going to be just the pharmacy and the
dental.
The dental. So those are the only two that they would be responding to.
Yes, sir, and we believe that's a very natural, again, using the term alliance, that's a very natural alliance because it's healthcare providers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Whoops, I'm sorry. Kevin, I missed you there. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One real quick, you mentioned that if this were to happen during a transition, there would be shared resources. Can you explain that a little bit better as to what shared resources would mean in that interim? I mean, when we're doing the appropriating process.
Okay, the Board of Pharmacy is a number of individuals, as you know, appointed by the governor, and within our group, there is established on an annual basis certain leadership positions, and the president of the Board of Pharmacy is here as well. He has appointed at least 2 of the members to work on transition. I'm not one of those members. I do know that work is being worked on as far as the sharing of space and individuals and the use of computers and data entry and that type of thing. So I know that work is progressing as to that transition, because we understand that we will be talking about a July transition probably if the bill is gets out of committee and is passed. So I'll defer that to the president of the board, who's here. Thank you.
All right. Well, we've been 45 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a bunch of people that wants to talk. So if we could, I probably should have said just a little earlier to try to limit our remarks. If we got people wanting to duplicate something that's already been said, we may just want to say ditto and roll on. But we've got 2 other bills to try to hear today. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak. Judy, is Garland? Judy? Gardner. I'm sorry. Didn't read that, ma'am.
It's okay. Hi, my name is Judy Gardner, and I'm a past president of the Georgia Board of Pharmacy, serving 2 terms at the pleasure of the governor. Additionally, I'm a practicing pharmacist, and I am the director of pharmacy services for Northside Hospital. I reside in Alpharetta, Georgia. Pharmacy is a highly regarded profession. The Board of Pharmacy is dedicated to protecting the public's safety as well as ensuring the regulatory and educational requirements of becoming part of this profession in Georgia. The board not only licenses new graduates, pharmacies, pharmacy wholesalers, we are also charged with ensuring that practicing pharmacists are doing so in a non-impaired manner. But ultimately, we are charged to protect, promote, and preserve the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Georgia. As many of you heard on the news last night, for the 11th straight year, the number of deaths due to drug overdoses increased. The CDC reported in 2010 there were 38,329 drug overdose deaths nationwide. Medicines, mostly prescription drugs, were involved in nearly 60% of overdose deaths that year, overshadowing deaths from illicit narcotics. Now, we intuitively know that illicit narcotic use is on the rise. We anticipate even more overdose deaths. Now is the time to gain efficiency in our regulatory system to allow for maximum productivity in protecting the public. House Bill 132 is simply an effort to gain efficiencies between professions that work closely together. This bill is a written version of what has been the practice of Pharmacy Board for many, many years. Additionally, it is an effort to get all of our current processes documented in one place. In this bill, there were two improvements to the current way of business. This bill allows for the hiring of non-post certified inspectors to aid in the inspection of our over 4,800 pharmacy licenses. That includes retail, hospital, wholesale, research, prisons, schools. This bill also allows trained and experienced Georgia Drugs and Narcotics agents to aid in investigations for other boards. With the strategy of sharing basic things like copiers and software programs to sharing legal services and common meeting space, the pooling of resources between these medically aligned boards is simply a common sense approach. Along these same lines, having an administrator and staff dedicated to the nuances of these related healthcare boards will improve throughput for every process. Staff will be able to focus on the issues of these boards rather than the over 40 boards that they focus on now. This again leads to better service for the profession and protection of the public health and safety. This bill allows for alignment, streamlining, and coordination of resources toward the common goal, as we were appointed by the governor, to protect, promote, and preserve the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Georgia.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you for being here, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm going to slide over here to this side. Michelle Boyce. Hey, Michelle.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Michelle Boyce, and I am a licensed dental hygienist in the state of Georgia. I'm also the vice president of the Georgia Dental Hygienists Association, and I'm a full-time dental hygiene educator in the state. Prior to starting teaching 2 years ago, I've practiced dental hygiene for 12 years in a general practice as well as in a periodontal specialty office. On behalf of the Georgia Dental Hygienists Association, I'm speaking today to express our concerns and objections to House Bill 132. This bill, like Secretary Kemp was saying, removes the Georgia dentistry from the jurisdiction of the Secretary of State and creates an autonomous board that will increase the size of government and possibly increase costs of licensure to dental hygienists. If this bill passes, there will be no accountability to any outside person or agency, not the Secretary of State, not the Department of Community Health, nor the Commissioner of the Department of Community Health. This is clearly stated on lines 823 through 826, as the counselor had read to y'all. According to the language of the bill, the Board of Dentistry shall be autonomous from the Board of Community Health and the Commissioner of Community Health, and shall function independently of the department without approval or control of the department. In addition to this bill, it would remove the protection that is provided by the independent oversight of the Secretary of State's office that now hires and fires the division director and performs the administrative functions of the board. Under this bill, the Board of Dentistry would hire, fire, and set the salary for the executive director. This would remove any independence of the executive director from the Board of Dentistry and would hold the executive director accountable to no one but the Board of Dentistry. And that accountability, it really scares me. Because currently in Georgia, there's 6,807 licensed dental hygienists, and that accounts for 55% of the licensees that we're talking about. This bill was initiated without consulting any dental hygienist or the Georgia Dental Hygienists Association. So if the Board of Dentistry moves to an autonomous board, there'll be no checks and balances for the majority of licensed dental professionals that would be directly affected by this move. I listened online last night to the testimony that was given last week to this committee, and the board had stated that there would be an increase in current licensing fees in order to cover the added expenses of software, hardware, and staff. So that's kind of scary to me too, because we're talking about budgeting issues and y'all appropriate the money. So to me, it is just scary. So one thing that the Georgia Dental Hygienists Association does understand and support that we do need extra funding for the Board of Dentistry. If that's within the Secretary of State, we suggest that there could be a possible proposal to provide a line item budget that the Board of Dentistry wants as part of the budget for the Secretary of State. So just wanted to thank you for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I'm free to answer.
Now, this young lady's in my district, and she was scared to death coming up here today.
I'm still scared.
But you have done a great job. She and I have talked several times, and you have done a great job presenting
Thank
today,
you.
ma'am. I think we have a question for you. You sure? I didn't mean to cut you off, Dale. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here. Did a great job. Wendy Blonde. Did I get that name right?
Yes, sir. You did. I'm a dark-headed blonde. I know it's confusing. Greeting representatives, and thank you, Committee Chairman Maxwell, for this opportunity. I am Wendy Blonde, President-elect of Georgia Dental Hygiene Association. Speaking on behalf of the future of our organization and our profession, we ask you, our elected representatives, to oppose House Bill 132 in its current form. As a pure elected officer, I can confirm the testimony shared by Vice President Boyce, that it is an accurate reflection of the opinions and the clear opposition our profession shares towards this bill. Now I'm getting nervous. I can also confirm that we collectively recognize the impacts of House Bill 132 expand well beyond its written presentation. I can't tell you everything that's wrong with how it's written, but I can tell you with absolute confidence that granting the Board of Dentistry more autonomy and lack of oversight would be an unwise decision. Acceptance of HB 132 reduces, if not eliminates, the voice of the people. Allow me to expand on some of the voices that could possibly be lost. The voices of over 6,800 dental hygienists who may be put in financial hardship from unrestricted increases on renewal fees, or the feeling that they may have when their liberty to provide care for our community within our professional scope is being challenged. What recourse will we have? Who will we go to? The GDA and the Board of Dentistry has already proven themselves uninterested in our voice when they drafted this bill without any inclusion of GDHA in the process. Well, you have already seen the faces behind some of those dental hygiene voices that we are talking about right now. Over 150 of these professionals living and working in your district took time away from school and work to visit you earlier this month. We were the ones wearing white lab coats and shaking your hands and letting you know that we count on you. GDHA would support the amendment for the Board of Dentistry to have a line item budget added through the Secretary of State. So we are looking for resolution for their concerns as well. Excuse me. February has been an eye-opening experience for me as a leader within my profession. I would like to conclude by speaking to you candidly for a moment from my own personal observations and concerns, aside from ADHA and GDHA. I personally attended the Board of Dentistry meeting this month. It was a 5-hour round-trip drive from my home. This trip was not compensated by any organization. I have to tell you that my observations of the decision-making process used by the Georgia Board of Dentistry was both alarming and disheartening. My overall impression upon observing the Georgia Board of Dentistry in action is that they need more oversight, not less. In one line, it is not in the best interest of our public or our industry at large for the Georgia Board of for the Georgia Board of Dentistry to become an autonomous entity outside of the Secretary of State. I firmly stand with the GDHA's position to oppose House Bill 132. Thank you for your time and your interest in the well-being of this great state.
Any questions for Ms. Blonde? Representative Rutledge.
Real quick, how many hygienists are there licensed in the state of Georgia?
There's over 6,800.
How many are members of your association?
The number of members that we have, we're really appreciative of the people that can step forward and donate their time to a professional organization. I think I speak for all professional organizations when I say I wish the number was higher. But as the Georgia Board of Dentistry, as the representing body for Georgia Dental Hygiene, they're still, even if they're not members, they're held accountable to the standard of practice set forth by our organization. And we're there to serve them whether they're members or not. And they're held accountable for the decisions that do come from my organization, either way.
Number 23. I'm sorry, okay. Push your button back down again. Let me turn you back. Try that now.
Thank you.
Just switch on the back.
Yeah, is the green light on?
Yep, ma'am.
There you go. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. What percent of representation, if any, currently exists for the hygienists on the dental board?
I'm glad you asked that question. Right now, there's 11 members on the Georgia Board of Dentistry. Only one is a dental hygienist. It's very difficult for dental hygiene to have our issues addressed properly through the Georgia Board of Dentistry. When I mentioned earlier my concerns for when I visited and watched them in action was I kind of saw a lack of understanding about my profession and some of the services that we offer. And so I think that more representation on the Georgia Board of Dentistry would be a great solution for my profession. I know this bill doesn't change the structure of the Board of Dentistry, but right now we only have one out of 11 members.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, I believe it is. Rick Allen?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rick Allen, Director, Georgia Drugs and Narcotics Agency, and I'll be brief. General Assembly created our agency in 1908, and contrary to popular belief, I was not here when they started.
All right.
I think Alan Powell was. but neither here nor there. We support this bill, sir, just to lump it together. We have been doing our work. I've been there almost 37 years. We look forward to working with the dental boards. We've worked with them for years. We've made cases on dentists and physicians. We're charged with protecting the public health by making sure prescription drugs are handled correctly, and that's what we intend to keep doing as long as it's in your pleasure to fund us. And we look forward to doing it the best way we can, however you see fit.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here today. Dr. Holcomb.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to present some issues from the Georgia Board of Dentistry. As mentioned before, I'm Steve Holcomb. I have served at the pleasure of 4 separate governors on this board, and I'm in my 21st year. So from some standpoint, I do have a historical perspective, and of what has occurred with this board may be greater than some of the other individuals. One of the things that I do bring is the boots on the ground type of information to you, not so much about the specifics of the budget or the revenue or whatever. But I can tell you from the board perspective, our primary objective is public responsibility, and is to protect the health and welfare of the citizens. You've heard that over and over, I think, in this pertinent testimony, and it's good to see that as a recurring theme. And we need to be able to do our job that we swore our oath to, and that's to protect the public. And currently, in the situation that we're with, in the Secretary of State's office, we're not able to do that. And it may be budgetary. It is budgetary. But to move from the Secretary of State's office to the Department of Community Health is not an expansion of government, in our opinion. It's a transfer from one umbrella to another. The biggest difference that the board sees, and you've heard this before, but from the boots on the ground, people that have to deal with these issues over and over, we have no input into what our budgetary needs are. We are grouped with the other licensing boards under that general budget. And the difference in the Department of Community Health would be that we would have an opportunity to submit budget items for your review, for your consideration, and thereby possibly a better use of the revenue and the funds that you would provide to us. The board answers to the governor. The Board of Dentistry, even under the Secretary of State's administrative oversight, answers to the governor. And likewise, under the Department of Community Health, we would also answer to the governor. That would be our final stopping point. So there's not an increase of autonomy for that board. There's the law under the Department of Community Health is no different than that under the Secretary of State. I did want to address a couple of the items. One was about the testimony last week about increase of fees. To clarify and to reiterate what I said was that the Board of Dentistry, the dental members of the Board of Dentistry, and having spoken with members of the dental profession, understand that there could be a likelihood that fees would have to be increased in order to try to help fund that transition. We did not reference the dental hygiene community. And I will tell you that this bill was discussed in open session by members not only of the public, but by members of the board at the last 2 board meetings where the public were open meeting, where all of that's available. In reference to, did the hygiene committee member who's chairman of the hygiene committee, that we have one hygienist, which is not uncommon with states across the nation, mainly because understand that hygiene duties in the state of Georgia are delegated by direct supervision. They answer directly to the dentist. The dentist is directly responsible for all procedures that they incur and that they do. So they're not on a separate strand that would require that. The number of complaints that come from the hygiene against hygienists usually fall on the backs of the dentist. So the concentration of the number of complaints we deal with on hygienists is very low. I will tell you that the board contacted the hygiene representative on the board and said, have you had any contact from any members of the public about this bill from your profession or otherwise? And to this point, she has not. So I'll move on with some other points. One of the things for us, and I think you've heard it recurring to, is the similarity of issues that these boards, that the Board of Pharmacy and the Composite Medical Board have with the Board of Dentistry. Our application process is not a simple single sheet of paper. It's very complex. There's investigations from other jurisdictions, people that have been licensed in other areas that may have had sanctions. There's reporting of test scores, not only on clinical licensure exams that encompass usually 4 separate parts, but also on national board exams. So that process is very complicated, along with GCIC reports, the National Practitioners Data Bank, which many of you may be familiar with as malpractice suits that are reported to a National Practitioners Data Bank. Very, very important for us to be able to obtain that information on licensees. And it's important that each board report those incidences from their own state. We have been so bogged down that I'm embarrassed to say that our state has been remiss administratively in reporting incidents to the National Practitioners Data Bank. This is huge. It's really huge. Not only can we not allow change of information with other boards, we're not doing our part not because of negligence. I think it's because of just the overwhelming amount of work to do with a limited amount of funds and a lot of personnel. You know, the issues that the Board of Dentistry deals with, and I mentioned this before, are high life criticality issues. High life criticality issues. We deal with quality of care, patient care delivery, impairment, diversion of drugs, fraudulent services. We deal with sedation, general anesthesia, medical injections. A lot of our issues that we deal with on a complaint and investigatory basis are very similar to the pharmacy board and to the medical board. Y'all bear with me. I'm from South Georgia, and I'm trying to talk real fast so I don't burn up your time. So if I seem like I'm stumbling over some of it, I apologize. You know, the medical composite board is in favor of this. You see the letter. I won't belabor that. They're waiting with open arms because we think we can enhance the services and provide a better bang for the buck. That's what I heard earlier, the bang for the buck. Well, the bang for the buck really boils down to, are we protecting the public? Are we doing what we're supposed to do? And so I think that by a combination of that, we actually get a combination of services. We actually get some fiscal and administrative efficiency of the cost. But the budget issue is in your realm. It's not in ours. We're boots on the ground trying to do what we're supposed to do. We're not able to do that under the current situation that we're in right now. So I'm happy to answer any questions for you that you might have, but we can't do the job that we need to do. Our applications are behind, our investigations are behind. It has nothing to do so much with necessarily the quality of the investigators. I think they try to do the best they can, but when they have to investigate issues of 40 different boards, there's no way that they can be as attentive to the specific concerns that we have in the medical field. So, you know, the use of investigative services with the composite board and with pharmacy, huge issue for us. Huge issue for us. When we have people that are being hurt and we can't get investigators to them in a timely fashion and we have to rely on public news to send us something, it's not appropriate. We're not protecting the public like that. And it's not because of negligence. I think they do the best they can with what they've been given. But I think there's a better way to do it. And that's going to be through a coercion of being able to utilize the same type of services.
Thank you, Dr. Holcomb. We do have a question. Number 28, is that Chairman Martin?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. You know why I was delayed. You were at the prior meeting. So
yes, sir.
I apologize for that. Dr. Holcomb, just if you recall, you mentioned that this was discussion in an open meeting. Is that a meeting where the agenda was out for the public?
Yeah, let me explain what happens with that type of, the agenda is always available, the open session agenda. But there's a session where the president will usually ask the members of the public that are there that have signed up as visitors, are there any issues that you know would be brought to the attention of the board or for the good welfare of the public, et cetera? And many times we have input from educators, we may have input from corporate dentistry, we may have input from the Georgia Dental Association, and frequently from the Georgia Dental Hygiene Association, and we welcome that input. And if are there any legislative issues that anybody's aware of that might have impact on the Board of Dentistry? And sometimes that is our fishing expedition to see if we're going to get blindsided by something.
Right.
And that's when that type of discussion occurs.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get to, because I clearly the response I've gotten over the last week or so, from a number of people in the hygiene profession, is that they weren't. This is new to them. With respect to their opinions, they don't get vetoed, neither do the dentists, in at least my opinion. But I am concerned about the notice. Were they aware of it prior to a week ago? So it wasn't necessarily something that would have been posted on the agenda. It came up at the meeting, but it was an open meeting.
Yes.
Was the representative from the hygiene community at either of the two meetings in which it was discussed?
I am sure that we could check.
You don't recall, you were there? Or
I can remember 20 years ago. I'm not sure I can remember 3 months ago.
Fair enough.
But what I'm saying is it is routine. They are normally very attentive to representation at the meeting.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to.
It would be unlikely for them not to be.
Okay, I was just trying to find out if they were there and they didn't communicate, or if they weren't there. And Mr. Chairman, and I know this is not for the purview, perhaps, the committee, I don't know what your posture is, but I think 2 representatives on that board as opposed to 1 is infinitely better in the event that one's not there. No, that's not what we're talking about today, but it would be something to consider.
That could be something looked at a future time. I thought I saw some heads shaking out there that the person was there at the meeting. I don't know.
Okay.
She was?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know how the proceedings go, but I can speak to it if needed.
Okay, only if there's another question. I think we got it answered. Any other questions for Dr. Holcomb? Anything else, Representative Martin?
If I believe that is that Ms. Blonde, I don't see as far as I could. If she could articulate directly to the question of was the hygiene community notified, I guess, of the bill, and I know we're in a hurry, so just if she could directly ask that, or I'll take it offline.
I don't mind. I would like to interject on that. That might give some clarification. Understand that the board is in support of the bill, obviously, but we were not the generation of the bill, and therefore we wouldn't have notified hygiene licensees, nor would we have advised dental licensees of that. So that type of purview through the dental board, we don't have money to investigate people. So, this was an action that would have been taken back by these organizations. Now, for example, if the Georgia Dental Society was there and they notify their individuals, if the Georgia Dental Association's there, they notify their individuals. If the Georgia Dental Hygiene Association is there, they notify their individuals. That's not within our purview for that type of public notification.
Okay.
And if we find that membership may be light on an organization, they may not get a blast to the majority of that profession.
May I? Since
all right, one more time.
All right. I'm just trying to get this because I know this is important. I've talked to representatives, I've talked to dentists, I've talked to hygienists, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but clearly there are people. It is clear to me that there are people unclear about how this will affect them that seem to have come to know about the bill in the last 7 to 10 days. So I'm not saying it was your responsibility to tell them, but in my mind, it is going to affect a lot of people. It is moving you from, being somehow connected to and reporting to a statewide elected official into an environment where you're not. So I'm just trying to make sure that all those affected understand that this is more than just moving. There are some moving parts within the legislation. I just want to make sure that folks that are going to be affected were notified.
Well, point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. Although we're under administrative oversight by the Secretary of State, our authority starts and stops with the governor, and it would be the same way under the Department of Community Health. We would not be removed from oversight.
Doesn't the Secretary of State appoint your division director to that?
The division director is an employee, yes.
And in the future, the board would do that.
Would appoint an executive director.
The function is the division director That's where the change. I'm just saying something changes that an elected official has some purview, and in the future he will have indirect purview through the board.
I can't speak to that. That's just going zoom.
Okay. All right. We got another speaker. One more speaker. Martha. Come on up. See if you can shed some light for us. See if you can set us straight on this, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Dr. Hawkins is passing out my comments in writing so that you'll have it in writing, but also so that I can be very brief. I want to start off by saying that I am the Executive Director for the Georgia Dental Association. The Georgia Dental Association represents 76% of the practicing dentists in the state of Georgia. I know how many members I have, and I know the percentage of market share that we have. We are very pleased to ask you to support this legislation. And as I said the last time I testified, what's in it for the dentist? Well, I can tell you what's in it for the dentist. The dentist cares about their patients, and they care about the public. And they want the public to be able to be protected, and they want any bad actors, any dentist or anyone else who's purporting to practice dentistry that should not be practicing dentistry, they want them to be dealt with and disciplined. Because if one dentist or one person who says they're practicing dentistry is out there harming the public, every single dentist's reputation is affected by that. So we care about the patients. I'd be happy to ask you, answer any questions. One clarification, though, to Representative Martin's. Right now, again, I want to make it very clear. The Secretary of State actually has no authority, no control over the board members. According to OCGA 43-1-17, the governor is the one that has the control over the boards. That will not change. To his point about the fact that the Secretary of State hires the division director now, under the language now, the board would hire the executive director, but it is subject to the approval of the commissioner of DCH. So there is no hire whoever you want to. Not that they would, I mean, I can't see that would be problematic, but there is approval by the Department of Community Health commissioner. So they are not autonomous in that. They won't hire a staff person that doesn't have some approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. I know you've heard a lot. I just want you to know that the members of our organization strongly urge you to pass this. We believe, Dr. Holcomb talked about that the board is willing to increase the licensure fees for dentists. I've made that very clear to the members of our organization as I have spoken to them across the state. Do they want to increase their fees? No. Are they willing to increase their fees? Yes. And they're willing to do it because they want to be able to have better service. They want better protection for the public. Again, it is all about money. The Secretary of State's office asked for a line item, and when the Secretary of State's office asked for that line item, he asked for a specific amount of money, and then the Secretary of State decides how that money will be distributed among the boards. If we have the opportunity to have a separate line item, we can ask the legislators for the money, and then we will have the ability to determine the best use of that money. We will gain efficiencies by being in with the pharmacy board and the composite medical board. We believe that this will ultimately save money. When you look at the amount, and I have the Secretary of State's, what it costs to license each one of the licensees, these are really just numbers on the page. You can allocate what you want to it. If the services aren't provided, if it costs $10 and the services and the licenses aren't being issued and the phone calls aren't being answered, it's $10. If it costs $41 but you're providing service, it costs $41. I heard the Secretary of State. I'm very sympathetic. I heard him testify that last month, when he was talking to the joint session of the House and Senate, he said last month they had 23 people in their call center answering phones, and they had 140 people on hold, not counting all the people that he had no idea who couldn't get in. Well, that call center answers calls for all 42 boards. We can have a common call center for pharmacy, for dental, and for medical, where we think we can do it better and more efficiency and at a cost savings. You know, when you ask how is this going to be done, it's kind of interesting. I just sat through one of your committees where House Bill 287, which is the governor's bill, will actually move the archives from the Secretary of State's office to the Board of Regents. And they figured out how to do that, so we're not as big as the archives. We think y'all can probably figure out how to do that as well. Any questions?
Questions for Ms. Martha?
Thank you very much.
I don't see any, ma'am. Mr. Representative Hawkins? Yes, sir. Wrap it up for us, please.
Appreciate it.
Good gracious.
I do want to address, I think, a very important point that the Secretary of State made, my good friend Brian Kemp. There's a point made about the division and how that was unclear. Let me assure you that that is not unclear. Attorneys from the governor's office working with Betsy Howerton developed that language, and it is specific. And the reason for this language development is, and in this bill will be law for this situation, that is, as a division and not an attached agency, they will not require agency personnel. This will not only save the state money, but also people on the ground. So I want that to be very clear to you. I think that's an important point that was made, and that was addressed as this bill was being developed. Right. I will ask for your consideration, and please vote yes on this bill, HB 132.
Any questions? Final questions for the presenter of the bill? I'm sorry, Secretary of State. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't see you back there, sir. I was looking to the other side.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm certainly not going to try to undermine Representative Hawkins wrapping up. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things so you'll be, as I said earlier, educated when you make your vote here, if you decide to do that. In regards to pharmacy techs that were mentioned earlier by one of the supporters of the bill, you know, when you all passed registering pharmacy techs a couple of years ago, it was supposed to be a simple registration of 15,000 people. I think there's about that many pharmacy techs out there. All we were supposed to be required to do per the legislation was to put names on the list. Well, once that bill passed, the board actually voted to require us to check GEDs. There were other things that they wanted us to do that we argued with them about. And I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't do that, but we got $84,000, which is half of what we asked for to do the registration. And then we had to do even more work once the board got through with that. And I think that's what leads this whole argument about resources. It was mentioned about our call center not being able to answer specific questions to an industry and having FAQs. Well, we've been forced to do that because in our Secretary of State's office, our budget's been cut 30%. We've reduced our personnel 40%. We've had to fire all the mid-level management people that used to have the knowledge to answer those things because of budget cuts and the fees going somewhere else. So it's not that we can't do that. We don't have the resources to do that. That's why these groups want to go out on their own. And I can't blame them for that. You know, I'm just like them. I want the resources too, but I think what you got to remember is there's another 450,000 people that are going to be left behind. One last point I wanted to mention was enforcement that Ms. Gardner made about pharmacy, and I certainly agree with her in that. These are public safety issues. I've taken that oath as well to protect public safety and the laws of this state. Last year, I don't know what the numbers are for this year's budget, but last year, our investigative division, our law enforcement division in the Secretary of State's office got appropriated $2.3 million to do the work for elections, all voter fraud, all election cases like the Fulton County case we have going on now. The professional licensing division, those 500,000 Georgians, and regulate securities in this state, financial advisors, stockbrokers, which, as I said in my budget testimony, that figure has gone up because of the Dodd-Frank legislation. The Drugs and Narcotics is already a separate agency that does enforcement for pharmacy, and they got appropriated $1.9 million, I believe that number's correct, to do the enforcement of pharmacy. So only $400,000 less than us, and they're doing one thing versus the three things that we're asked to do. And I'm in full support of Drugs and Narcotics getting that money because they need it. As the pharmacists that are in the legislature will tell you, there's a reason they're appropriated that much. But I think when you look and compare the reason that we get complaints about not doing enforcement is because we don't have the resources. And that's what this whole thing is about. And if you all decide to do this and provide resources for the dentist and the pharmacist at DCH, I will certainly honor that decision and congratulate my friend Lee Hawkins. But I hope if you do that, you'll keep in mind the 450,000 other people that are complaining just as much as the dentist and the pharmacist. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Representative Cook, you have a question, or was it? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I didn't ask any other questions from any members. Representative Hawkins, were you finished? You wrapped it up? All right, committee members, y'all have heard the presentation today. Any action to be taken at this time? We're open for a motion if anybody wants to make one.
Trying to figure out a way to keep the money that goes to the Secretary of State at the same level it's at.
Number 25 or
Number 28. Chairman, if you,
yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what both folks are saying, and I'd like to work them out. I've talked to all sides of the thing, but I also sit on Chairman Rinder's General Government Committee and have heard the Secretary of State, and we're in day 20, and I know days are passing, but if the chair would intend to meet again shortly, I would like this to be done in a way such that we don't take away from the Secretary of State. I mean, we're moving by passing this bill, we would be moving money out of his organization that's not being accounted for in Chairman Rinder's Appropriation Committee, and as such, I'd like that to be worked out. If the chair would entertain it, I would move to table this bill until the chair's next meeting. That'd be an appropriate motion.
I think that's a move to table takes precedence over all any other motions, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? I'm trying to think who's my parliamentarian. All right, we had another question. Let me see if that's in order. Hold on a minute. I got another question here, number 25.
Well, I think my motion will be out of order since you've already got one on the floor, Mr. Chairman.
We could call for that motion. See if we. Well, that's true. We have a motion to table. Who's number? We got a second. All right. Representative Mitchell, you have something to add to us?
I believe now my motion would be out of order since his motion got a second.
Chairman Dixon, you got any words of wisdom?
Well, my question would be, the motion to table to a time specific, or just motion to table?
No, sir. Motion to table to call the chair. Yes, sir.
Probably be the next meeting. If I think we need to move in second on that. We got to move in second. We need to vote on that motion. Is that correct? That's where we stand now. All in favor of a motion to table to probably the next meeting of this committee? I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Raise your hand. Got 3. Any opposed at this time? I thought that they got 6 opposed, for the motion to table has died then. Number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
Well, all right, let's do that.
But first, I would like to, as Mr. Allen so aptly spoke a while ago, I guess I'm the senior member and I'd like to share a little bit of information with this committee.
Yes, sir.
With the chair's
Please do.
permission. You know, this isn't a unfamiliar issue. You know, these bills used to be handled, all the professional licensing used to be handled through the industry committee in the House. What we're seeing here today is nothing unusual. There's nothing new. This state never properly funded, and this is for the benefit of the Secretary of State's office, this state, through the budgetary process, never fully funded professional licensing, and it has grown worse and worse each year over the last 10 years with a lot of the shifting of the money and the downturn in the economy. And they have truly had the Secretary of State's office has truly been up against the wall of trying to provide the needed services with the issuance and the administration and the investigations. Now, for whatever reason, I never did understand over the years how dentistry, as one of the medical arts, and the hygienist, they wound up in the same category with a lot of the trades. That was something that should have long since been put over into the composite board. Those things that were of that issue, because we're not just talking about consumers losing money, we're talking about health and safety. You know, when people are putting their hands down your mouth, I mean, quite frankly, we're talking about something that a lot of us may take for granted, but we're talking about something that's serious. When we have growing areas in the state of a lot of the transients and a lot of the immigrants that come in, that they think it's fine to go to an unlicensed practitioner that do dentistry on the back porch, we're talking about the possibility of some real hazards, something that could really spread. Now, that being said, I want to be sure that everybody understands that this, and I know that the author of the bill was reluctant at certain points of this discussion to answer questions because he was being very delicate. We know how former senators are. They like to be very delicate in their nature. Delicate. Because they didn't want to give it the appearance that this was an outright fight of pointing fingers and condemning. Quite frankly, the Secretary of State has done an excellent job with what he's had to do with, and his personnel has also. But that being said, this is a matter that we need to move on with. You can table this bill if you so wanted to, but the issue is still going to be out there next week and the week after that. And probably the best thing that we can do is to go ahead and force this issue legislatively and then let the chips fall where they may and then go back through the budget process so that we will start seeing some reality in the budgeting process and those recommendations made to properly fund these folks that are doing the licensing on both ends of this. And with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that this committee do pass this recommendation.
We have a motion and several seconds. Thank you for that, Representative Powell, that dissertation. All in favor, let it be known by raising your hand again. Let's have a show of hands. Any opposed, like sign. Okay, looks like it has passed. And on that comment, I was at my pharmacist Saturday picking up some of my sack of drugs, and I picked up this little brochure, and I was flipping through it, and it tickled me to death. There's a tri-state denture center. It's not in Georgia, one of our neighboring states, but we will consider trade for jewelry, auto, electronics, and etc. You can get dentures, partials, repairs, relines, extractions, general dentistry. We have reasonable rates. I don't know if they're running a pawn shop or a dentist office, but it may be both. But I just picked that up when I was flipping through there, and I thought, damn, that's probably what some of these people are looking at here. All right. Thank y'all for being here. We are not through. The committee we have got, and Representative Hawkins, thank y'all and everybody that testified today. I appreciate you being here. We're going to take up, and committee members, thank y'all so much for your diligence in this.
I practiced before.
We need to look at House Bill 213. We got 2 more bills to take up. Another pharmacy bill. Lord, I hope this is the last one. Representative Stevens, are you still about? Come on up before all your people leave you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 213, you got a sub for us.
Yes, sir. Substitute is LC 362296S. Been some clarifying language in there. All this bill, as I said earlier in subcommittee, all it is attempting to do is keep a local pharmacist or a Georgia pharmacist involved in the accreditation process. In a nutshell, that's all that it does. It keeps your records private from private companies on a national level that might want to come in and accredit you on a national level. This just says that a local, a Georgia licensed pharmacist in good standings has to be part of the process. That's it.
And what problem are we solving here, sir? Help me understand the issue that we're trying to correct.
We have several companies on a national level that are trying to circumvent the actions of already accrediting Georgia Board of Pharmacy to use a national, go through the NABP, which is our National Board of Pharmacy, to create several layers of accreditation, so to speak, through pharmacies. Some of these can cost as much as $10,000 per pharmacy, and of course that cost has to be passed on to the consumer. And that may be fine for those that want to do that. But there are others, again, this process is outside of the purview of the board. This just keeps the board involved.
Questions? Yes, sir.
What benefit does that serve those pharmacists who want to be authorized or approved by another board?
They can still do that. It's a permissive language.
What purpose does that serve then?
There are some programs that they may choose to join on an accreditation, but that might require some sort of accreditation, and that's fine. But there are those pharmacies that may not want to participate in that accreditation process. They may not have a choice with a knife to their throat, so to speak. So this just gets the Georgia licensed pharmacist involved in that accreditation process. That's it in a nutshell.
Any further questions for the author of this bill? Do we have anybody here to speak for or against? I don't see anybody signed up. Yes, sir.
I was late coming in, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak very briefly. For the committee's information, let me give you an example of what happened to me in my practice. CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, required that I achieve certification in order to sell diabetic test strips to Medicare recipients. That certification paid to an individual private enterprise was going to be $10,000 to certify so that I could sell strips to Medicare patients. And I think that's the sort of thing that Representative Stevens is looking at. This is simply an example of what can happen. I think in Georgia we believe Georgians can take care of Georgians and that we can provide the best level of certification and clarification for the safety of the citizens of the state. I simply offer that as an example of what he's trying to do with this legislation. And again, the safety of the citizens of the state of Georgia are what we're all about.
All right,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Got two lights blinking. Number 25, Mr. Chairman.
I was wanting to be recognized for a motion, but somebody else may have a question first.
Chairman Dixon.
I was just going to ask Representative Broderick, if this passes, then would they have not been able to force you to get that certification?
What it's going to say is that it's going to have to be Georgia-based. That I couldn't have a New Jersey company in here. We would have to say, all right, let's have Georgians take care of Georgians. Now, that was on a federal level, but it could be for the profession as a whole. Okay. Also, okay. Thank you, Chairman Dixon.
Chairman Powell.
Be glad to make a motion if I don't have to listen to any more pharmacy and dental bills today.
We're going to liquor next. We're going to go to something you enjoy. We're going to liquor bill.
Something that I can relate to.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, at this
yes,
time
sir.
I'd like to make a motion that this committee forward on House Bill 213 as a committee substitute with a do pass recommendation.
All right, we have a move and second. Any other discussion? All in favor, let it know by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, one more bill. Representative Spencer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring to you a substitute to House Bill 99. You should have it there. We're working off of LC 362283S. We had an interesting subcommittee meeting last week, but currently in the state of Georgia, it is not legal to have homebrew competitions. Homebrew competitions are happening all over the country. Actually kind of happen in this state a little bit when heads are turned. But the truth of the matter is, the reason why it is illegal in Georgia is because we don't have the transport of home brew. And that's why the competitions are essentially illegal. Across the nation, you have homebrew competitions, you have national competitions. They attract a lot of people. Home brewers are essentially, I call them like minor leaguers, if you will, into the seeds into the craft brew industry. So many people who have a craft brew industry got their start as home brewers, and the craft brew industry in Georgia is growing, and it has a positive economic impact. So what we're doing in House Bill 99 is essentially making homebrew competitions legal. And we also are expanding the amounts they can make. Right now there's a restriction to 50 gallons. And I'll sort of walk you through the bill, starting on line 28. Right now, the restriction is 50, and you can go back up to line 17 to see that in existing code. But it goes. We increase that to 100 gallons per calendar year for one person of legal drinking age in the residence. Right now, you cannot transport home brew out of your residence for any other purpose. So the only thing we're doing in this bill is to transport that for the purposes of a competition only. So that's what we're doing in House Bill 99, and that's on line 37. Going back to the expansion of how much an individual can make, you can go up to 200 per gallons in a gallon per calendar year if there's two or more persons of legal drinking age in the residence. So federal law allows you to create homebrew up to 200 gallons. So this brings Georgia code up to parity, up to the federal law, to make that consistent. I live in a border state, or border county. The state of Florida has homebrew competitions, so their limit is 200. So those folks that are engaging in homebrew competitions in the state of Florida that live in my community are asking us, why can't we update Georgia's code? And that's really what brought this legislation.
Now that's for taxation, right? You can go up to 200 gallons before you have to pay federal excise tax?
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that was brought out. Thank you.
So this is for personal consumption and not for sale. A homebrew is not. We're not changing that. It's not for sale. And I'll continue to walk through that bill here on lines 38. It does allow for the transportation of homebrew, not to exceed 25 gallons for that specific competition, and that would also have to be a permitted competition, which you can see down there in lines 50 and 51. So in order to transport home brew, you would have to have proper labeling. This sort of fits in with the regulatory structure of the Department of Revenue. It's got to be a name of the producer. You've got to have an address or the residence in which the product was produced, and you also have to have the permit address or the address of the homebrew special event and the permit number in line 44 of where this is being held. Also, the bill allows a person to have up to 6 competitions in a calendar year, and that permit's at $50, and the local authority will write rules and regulations for that permitting process. But that's essentially what the bill does. This is kind of new territory for the state, and I had a lot of questions, and we have made some small changes to the bill. You may have the original in your packet, but we made changes on line 46, 49, and 55 to say local governing authority instead of the commissioner. It's usually the local authorities that issue these permits. So we want to be consistent with that, and that's pretty much what the bill does. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
Wow, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree here. Number 19, Chairman Dixon, you were first.
Okay. Got two questions. Is there any provision for health, safety, food inspection?
That doesn't address anything like that. Home brewers, they want to make sure their product is good. They want to make sure their product is safe, and they're doing it for their own consumption. They have to, it's hard work. It takes about 4 weeks to make a batch. So it's not something that is carelessly attended to, because it's constantly attended to, and within the homebrew culture, and especially those that want to compete, they want to make sure that product is safeguarded against any contaminants.
Yeah, that used to be true with moonshine too. But somehow it doesn't play out that way, I don't think. That concerns me some. I mean, just even when you're being careful, if you're not really attuned to some of the hazards of food preparation, there would be nobody inspecting it now. The local board of health.
Yeah, that question did come up. Somebody's brought that up, and my deference would be to the county board of health to inspect those things at competitions if they were concerned about that.
Well, the other question deals with the alcoholic content of beer. Has a fairly standardized alcohol content.
You're asking if there's a regulation on the proof? Is that,
yes.
Okay. Not in this legislation. Most home brewers are somewhat a little bit liberal with their content, their alcohol content when they make these, but most home brewers are going to try to keep it as limited as much as possible. But
do other states have in their regulation have any?
There may be.
I'd kind of like to know what that is then.
Is there a level when it passes, if anybody's here that knows, when it reaches past the stage of beer? I mean, I don't know anything about brewing beer, but I don't know. We'll circle back around.
Martin might have some answers on there.
Is there a certain level of content for brew, alcohol content?
Actually, Chairman, there is, but I think the commission can address that as far as the level that's allowed in Georgia for it being a lot better.
Okay. We'll get Howard up here in just a second to clear that up. All right. Chairman Dixon, anything else?
Once we get answers to those, I'm through.
Okay. Well, get you off. Number 22. Hey, check your button in the back.
Yeah, there you
go. There we go.
Hey.
Sorry about that. Did you work with the industry in crafting this bill at all? Or
I have talked to the folks in the beer industry. Most of them did not oppose this legislation. I've talked with the Department of Revenue. They are here. When we structured the language, in such a way that it would currently fit within the current tier system, and that they would have some regulatory authority over some of these competitions that so I did not enumerate in the bill.
Okay, but no real pushback from any distributors or anything like that?
No, because it's not a tax product. This is not a tax product. And
okay.
Yeah.
And I guess for the quality control issue that Chairman Dixon was talking about, so would that be like an official taster at a competition, or? Just asking.
Well, I'll let the Department of Revenue speak to the alcohol content portion of it. But again, this was written in their framework that they currently have, and if that's a concern, then that would be something that they would regulate in terms of what regulations they would make in terms of governing competitions.
Representative Von Epps.
Mr. Representative.
Try it again.
Mr. Representative.
Yeah.
All right. If you will, walk me through what a special, a homebrew special event looks like. For an example, if you came to LaGrange, where could it be held? What happens when everybody consumes 25 gallons of homebrew, and how do they get home? So how does that generally process?
Well, most homebrew competitions are small. They're not very large. It's actually a rather boring event to watch because you've got multiple judges judging different craft brew, or not craft brew, but homebrew. So the events are, most of them are pretty small. Now you do have some larger competitions that happen nationally. So people usually end up registering for the event. They bring their product to the event. In the case of permitting, it would be, in this case, it would be the local authority permitting the actual event. So again, most of these competitions are rather small.
Would they be in facilities that's authorized to distribute alcohol? Or
Currently in Georgia law, they're not allowed. They would not be allowed to do that, and this bill does not allow them to have a competition on a licensed premise.
So it would have to be.
It would have to be on an unlicensed premise. Yeah, and local authorities would have to decide. Then the Department of Revenue would decide how to govern those homebrew competitions. I didn't want to put a lot of specifics in the legislation because this is sort of new territory for our state. I wanted to be able to allow the Department of Revenue to regulate that as sort of how they saw. So I didn't want to spell out a lot of those finer details.
Mr. Chairman,
because things could change.
Yes, sir.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
So you're permitting the transportation of up to 25 gallons?
Yes, sir.
At one time?
Not to exceed 25 gallons.
Wow.
And most homebrew competitions are not bringing that amount. But some people in some competitions in other states, they allow kegs, but in this case, we're not allowing that in this case. I will let the Department of Revenue sort of guide that issue.
Number 16, Representative Cook. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question just to clarify. With regard to the safety issue, would it be true to say that you left that or didn't address that point because, one, it is for home brew, so they're going to be partaking in it, and two, I guess an example of that would be if there was a subdivision cookout, not having the local health department come out. I mean, after all, it's a subdivision cookout, just like a homebrew competition would be. There's a little inherent risk if I'm going to go to my neighbor's house and eat a steak if I know them to not be, quote unquote, clean with their food.
Right.
Would that be?
Right. I mean, there are going to be some of those concerns when you go to somebody else's home and try their food. And, there's always that risk of food poisoning and things like that. So I think the risk is inherent here. I mean, there is going to be some risk.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess we hope the alcohol will take care of whatever's in it. Any other questions? I think we've got
Sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question concerning the liability. We talk about the safety issue, and we are allowing transport of 25 gallons to be used only by the judges at this type of event. Does the liability fall then on the person who produces the home brew or the event holder?
Good question. It would probably, my guess would be, it would be the event holder. That was probably where the liability would be. Like I said, there's always a risk in doing these kinds of things. So that would probably up to my assumption would be the event holder. It's kind of like going, if you're registering for a tournament or a tennis tournament or a basketball tournament, and you're going to hold, are you going to hold the people who are putting on the tournament or liable for any medical injuries? So there's always that risk there. So we do live in a society where there's risk. I know not all risk can be addressed, and I think we're dealing with the same inherent risk here.
Any other questions, ma'am? Good. All right, that's all the questions. We got I think a little issue that's just come up, and Chairman Powell's going to solve this for us, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your temperance chairman over here would like to be heard on this. You know, we gave this a pretty good vetting the other day, and there was one issue that came up since that point, and that dealt with transporting, and that would be the possibility if in those of us who were not really knowledgeable about it, and that was how would you transport this, what type of containers, because you didn't want it as such that it might be in violation of the open container law. And we've got some language that we want to amend this as a committee substitute with, and at this time I'd like for Sean Marie to read this, and we've consulted with the Department of Revenue, and this code section was basically pulled out of existing language on the Merlot to go.
Okay, let me ask one other question. There was a question, I think, for the Department of Revenue. Did everybody get their answers on the questions, or was it one other question we had for the Department of Revenue?
Alcohol content, I think.
Alcohol content,
was
that's
the
right.
Question.
Howard, would you come up and enlighten us a minute on that before we do the amendment, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm Howard Tyler, Division Director with Alcohol and Tobacco. That doesn't change under the existing law. Malt beverages may be up to 14% alcohol by volume as long as they're fermented beverages. If they go over that, they fall into distilled spirits classification and would not be lawful under this. This does not change the existing law concerning the alcohol content.
Okay, sir. That's answered the questions there, 14%. Okay. Thank you, sir. And I appreciate you being here. You've been here all day listening through all this, and thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Sean Marie, you want to read to us the, what's your number, madam? If you'll share with us the amendment we need to process.
So the Representative Powell's proposal is on line 39 to strike that line, and instead it will read beverages are securely sealed in one or more containers and clearly labeled with the following information, : and then to add between lines 44 and 45 the following language: if transported in a motor vehicle, these securely sealed containers shall be placed in a locked glove compartment, a locked trunk, or the area behind the last upright seat of a motor vehicle that is not equipped with a trunk, period. And as some of y'all may recall, that last sentence that I read directly comes from Code Section 3-6-4, which was part of their Merlot to go bill. And by that I mean it allows you at a restaurant to reseal the wine bottle and then carry it home. And so this mimics, if you approve this amendment, it would mimic that language that's in that code section.
All right, we've heard the amendment. So that you couldn't carry it in your little glove box beside you in an open container, then have it loose. That's basically what it's saying. You want to make sure it's protected, and that's a great point we brought up, because that was something I think we sort of questioned and skirted around the other day, that figuring how they was going to transport this. And 25 gallons to me is a pretty good amount of beer. That's, yeah. All right, we've heard the amendment, and thank you for doing that, ma'am. Do we have any action on this bill now from the committee? I'm sorry, we got a move do pass as amended. Move do pass as a committee substitute. I have another representative.
I was going to move, Mr. Chairman, but others have beat me to it.
Okay. All right. Chairman Powell, anything?
I think the posture, if I understand the posture, is a motion's been made with the committee substitute in front, and we need to amend the committee substitute.
Okay. Amend the committee substitute. So that's the move, and we have a second. Is that correct?
I have a motion to amend.
Amend the committee substitute. And a second. We have a move and a second on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. All right. Thank you very much. We've got. Oh, now we got to have a motion to do pass. Thank you. And now we've amended the committee substitute. Thank you, sir. God, I'm glad I got these chairmen in here keeping me straight. Now we need a move and second to do pass the amended bill. Got a move and second on that. All right. All in favor to pass the bill as amended, let it remember saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate
that. Committee members, I want to thank you for your patience. We've got a couple of bills go to subcommittee. If I can find them. We got two alcohol bills that are going to, here, you got them? All right, 313, 314, and the other one down there.
Okay. We've already signed those.
Those have already, 313.
314 have already been signed. Okay. We've got HB 373, which is the only one we've got right now, which is the separate chapters required regulate provisions relating to cemeteries and funerals provide, and that'll go to regulations.
All right, that's the one we got. Any other business come before the committee today?
Just those who are on the professional boards and commissions subcommittee, we're trying to get a meeting scheduled for Monday afternoon. There's two bills in that subcommittee.
All right, just let us know, sir. Well, you guys are the hardy bunch that stayed with us. Thank you very much. I appreciate the committee members. Thank you for y'all indulgence. We've had a long day, but I appreciate all you've done. Appreciate your hard work, and we will see you again soon. Meeting adjourned.